Okay, hi everyone, welcome back to the Comptia Security Plus course. How to dispose of computers and other IT equipment securely. Organizations might opt to recycle computers and other equipment or donate them. Rarely do organizations throw away equipment. It might be illegal to do so depending on your location and depending on what IT equipment is to be thrown away. The first thing an IT person should do is consult local municipal guidelines. A basic example of a policy and procedure that an organization enforces might look like the following. Policy: recycle or donate IT equipment that has been determined to be outdated and non-productive to the company. Step 1, define the equipment to be disposed of. Step 2, obtain temporary storage for the equipment. Step 3, have the appropriate personnel analyze the equipment, verify whether the equipment is outdated and whether it can be used somewhere else in the organization. If a device can be used in another area of the organization, it should be formatted, flashed, or otherwise reset to the original default and then transported to its new location. If a device cannot be reused in the organization, move to step 4. Step 4, sanitize the devices or computers. Check for any removable media inside or connected to the computer. These should be analyzed and recycled within the organization if possible. Remove any RAM, label it and store it. Remove the hard drive, sanitize it and store it. If necessary, based on organizational policies, pulverize or otherwise destroy the device. Reset any UEFI, BIOS, or other passwords to the default setting. Step 5, recycle or donate items as necessary. This is just an example of a basic recycle policy and procedure, but it gives you an idea of the type of method an organization might employ to best make use of its IT equipment and to organize the entire recycling donating process. In step 4, the policy specifies to sanitize the hard drive. Sanitizing the hard drive is a common way of removing data, but not the only one. The way data is removed might vary depending on its proposed final destination. Data removal is the most important element of computer recycling. Proper data removal goes far beyond deletion or the formatting of digital media. The problem with file deletion formatting is data remnants, or the residue that is left behind, from which recreation of files can be accomplished with the use of software such as SpinRite or other data recovery applications. Companies typically employ one of 3 options when met with the prospect of data removal: clearing. This is the removal of data with a certain amount of assurance that it cannot be reconstructed. The data is actually recoverable with special techniques. In this case, the media is recycled and used within the company. Again, the data wiping technique is used to clear data from media by overwriting new data to the media or by performing low-level formats. A regular format within the operating system is not enough because it can leave data behind, known as data remnants. Data remnants can exist within cluster tips. A cluster tip is the last bit of the cluster that is not used by the file and typically is not automatically erased with the rest of the cluster. When doing standard formatting or deleting, remnants of data can exist in these cluster tips, which can be removed by using specific third-party data wiping software. Purging or low-level formats. The low-level format is initiated through third-party software, or in some cases in the BIOS, which formats the drive in a way that is similar to when the drive first came from the manufacturer. In some cases, patterns of 1s and 0s are written to the entire drive. Several software programs are available to accomplish this. Low-level formats are often frowned upon because they can reduce the lifespan of a drive and so might not be acceptable if the drive is to be recycled within the company. Purging, also known as sanitizing, this is once again the removal of data, but this time it's done in such a way so that it cannot be reconstructed by any known technique. In this case, the data media is released outside the company. Special bit level eraser software or other means is employed to completely destroy all the data on the media. This type of software will comply with the US Department of Defense DoD 5220.22M standard, which requires 7 full passes of rewrite. It is also possible to degauss the disk, which renders the data unreadable, but might also cause physical damage to the drive. Tools such as electromagnetic degaussers and permanent magnetic degaussers can be used to permanently purge information from a disk. Destruction. This is when the stored media is physically destroyed through pulverizing, shredding, purging, incineration, and so on. At this point, the media can be disposed of in accordance with municipal guidelines. Some organizations require a certificate of destruction to show that a drive has indeed been destroyed. This is obtained from the third-party vendor that performs the drive destruction. Incident response procedures. Incident response is a set of procedures that an investigator follows when examining a computer security incident. Incident response procedures are a part of a security incident management, which can be defined as the monitoring and detection of security events on a computer network and the execution of proper response to those security events. However, often IT employees of the organization discover the incident. Sometimes they act as the investigators also. It depends on the resources and the budget of the organization. So it is important for the IT personnel to be well briefed on policies regarding the reporting and disclosure of incidents. Don't confuse an incident with an event. An example of a single event might be a single stop error on a Windows computer. In many cases, the blue screen of death BSOD won't occur again, and regardless, it has been logged in case that it does. The event should be monitored, but that is about all. An example of an incident would be when several DDoS attacks are launched at an organization's web servers over the course of a workday. This will require an incident response team that might include the security administrator, IT, or senior management, and possibility a liaison to the public and local municipality. You will find that organizations might use varying incident response process. The National Institute of Standards of Technology, NIST, breaks the process down into 4 main phases. The Comptia Security Plus objectives include 6 phases. In the past, I have worked with organizations that break the process down into as many as 10 phases. The key is to know the policies, procedures of whatever organization you work for. As far as the Comptia Security Plus Objectives Incident Response Plan IR, the process can be summed up as follows. Phase 1, preparation. It all comes down to preparation. Consider the data breach. For example, an organization with no planning will take much longer to repair the problem and will have a hard time controlling the damage and loss, while an organization with a well-planned incident response procedure in advance, a strong security posture, and a knowledgeable Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, will be able to limit the damage to data and to the company reputation by quickly discovering the breach, having an internal response team ready to take action, obtaining forensics data quickly, and beginning the seamless notification process and inquiry response plan. Phase 2, identification. The recognition of whether an event that occurs should be classified as an incident. Once incident, you might be required to make contact with other groups or escalate the problem if necessary. Phase 3, containment, isolating the problem. For example, if it is a network attack, the attacker should be extradited to a padded cell where the attacker can be analyzed and monitored only, or if only one server has been affected so far by a worm or virus, it should be physically disconnected from the network. The same goes for devices. They should be removed from the network or from a connected computer if the incident concerns them. This phase might also include evidence gathering in a way that preserves the evidence integrity and further investigation so that you can ascertain exactly what happened and why. Phase 4, eradication, removal of the attack or threat, quarantine of computers, device removal if necessary. Phase 5, recovery, retrieval of data, repair systems, re-enable servers and networks, reconstitute server rooms or the IT environment, and so on. Damage and loss control comes into play here. It can be a very slow process to make sure that as much data is recovered as possible. Phase 6, lessons learned. The scenario should be reviewed to define what went wrong, why, ultimately defining the lessons to be learned, how the organization can improve, document the process, and make any changes and procedures and processes that are necessary for the future. Damage and loss should be calculated, and that information should be shared with the accounting department of the organization. The affected systems should be monitored for any repercussions. Of course, an incident response policy can be much more in-depth, specify exact procedures, and vary in content from organization to organization. To find out more about common practices and standards for incidents, see the ISO IEC 27002 2013 or 27002 2005 standard, or NIST Special Publication 80061 Revision 2. Due to the length and breadth of the information, there is far too much to cover in this book. I supplied some links to these resources in the View Recommended Resources document online, and you can search the internet for one of several documents that whittles down the content to a more manageable. The Security Plus exam expects you to know only the basics of internet response. The six phase process listed previously in typical example. However, an organization might have more or fewer phases, and its procedures might vary. In organizations, typical incident response policies and procedures generally detail the following: initial incident management process. This includes who first found the problem, tracking tickets, and various levels of change controls. It also defines first responders who perform preliminary analysis of the incident data and determine whether the incident is actually an incident or just an event, and the criticality of the incident. Emergency response detail if the incident is deemed to be an emergency. This details how the event is escalated to an emergency incident. It also specifies a coordinator of the incident, how and when the cyber incident response team will meet, lockdown procedures, containment of the incident, repair and test the systems. Collection and preservation of data. Sherlock Holmes based his investigations on traditional clues such as footprints, fingerprints, and Sakara at Analyse to this, a security investigator needs to collect log files, alerts, captured packets, and so on, and preserve the integrity of this information by retaining forensic images of data. Modification of any information or image files during the investigative process will most likely void its validity in a court of law. One way to preserve evidence properly is to establish a chain of custody, the chronological documentation or paper trail of evidence. This is something that should be set up immediately at the start of an investigation. It documents who has custody of evidence all the way up to litigation or a court trial, and verifies that the evidence has not been modified. Your work might also be affected by a legal hold, which is a notification that the normal disposition of data, media, and documents is suspended. An incident response policy lists proper procedures when it comes to the procurement of evidence, damage, and loss control. The incident response policy also covers how to stop the spread of damage to other IT systems and how to minimize or completely curtail loss of data. But a lot of this is really just posturing. The toughest part of the job is figuring out what happened during the instance and how it happened. This means hardcore forensics. This might be taken care of internally, but more often than not, it'll be a job for third-party vendors, forensic consultants, and specialists. The incident response policy might define how computer forensics or digital forensics should be carried out. It might detail how information is to be deciphered from a hard disk or other device. Often it dictates the use of hard drive hashing so that computer forensic experts can identify tampering by outside entities. It might also specify a list of rules to follow when investigating what an attacker did. For example, forensic investigators verify the integrity of data to ensure that it has not been tampered with. It is important that computer forensic investigations are carried out properly in case legal action is taken. Policies detailing the proper collection and preservation of evidence can be of assistance when this is the case. There are some basic forensic procedures concerning data acquisition that can be utilized within the incident response process. Most commonly, these are applied during the containment phase, but could be performed during other phases as well. Some of these include capture and hash system images. If a computer's data is to be used as evidence, the entire drive should be imaged, copied before it is investigated. The imaging process should be secured and logged, and the image itself should be hashed. The hashing process should take place before and after the image is created. This will protect the image from tampering and prove the integrity of the image. Generally, imaging is done to the hard drive of the computer, but if the computer is on memory and other components, media can also be imaged, it is important to consider order of volatility, OOV, when imaging any media. As discussed further down this list, live CDs, live DVDs, and flash drives are commonly used to take an image of a computer. These are operating systems that run directly off of removable media because they are outside of the computer's regular OS environment. They are excellent options if you don't want to disturb the system. Examples of these include Knoppix and Backtrack. Analyze data with software tools. The data files have to be analyzed carefully. Forensic toolkits, FTKs, can be invaluable for this. Examples include guidance software, NCase, Access Data, Forensic Toolkit, the Sleuth Kit, Open Source, Disk Investigator, Freeware, and Defined Technologies, Disk Digger, to name a few. capture screenshots. A computer that is being investigated might be compromised. Therefore, it is usually not wise to use screen capturing software that is installed on the affected computer. Instead, take an actual photo of the various screens you wish to capture using a camera. Review network traffic captures and logs as part of an investigation. An analyst will review network captures made with a network sniffing program such as Wireshark. Logs should also be preserved, hashed, and stored, including firewall logs, server logs, router switch logs. Capture video. Any video surveillance equipment that recorded the incident will need to be analyzed. Before doing so, recorded video should be captured to a computer or to an external media device. Once again, the process should be secured and logged so that a person cannot claim that the evidence has been tampered with. Different municipalities, governments, and organizations will have varying policies on how this is to be accomplished. A forensic analyst should be well versed on these policies before responding to an incident. Keep in mind that the timestamp for video might be incorrect. When this happens, the investigator should establish what real time is using a legitimate time server. The real time should be compared to the timestamp of the video. The difference between the two is known as the record time offset. Consider the order of volatility, OOV. OOV can be summarized as the life expectancy of various types of captured data during forensic analysis. For example, optical discs can be preserved for tens of years. USB flash drives and tape backup can usually be preserved for years. Hard drives can be expected to last from 1 to 5 years. However, information stored in memory, cache, or CPU registers and any running process only lasts for seconds or even milliseconds and nanoseconds. The OOV of media and captured data should be considered when gathering evidence that will be used in a court of law. Take statements from witnesses. Witnesses are people who were present during an event and were cognizant of what happened during the event. They are used during court cases, and investigations can describe what they saw, heard, smelled, felt, and so on. A witness can corroborate evidence that was gathered from video, computer logs, captures, and other technical evidence. Review licensing. Depending on the situation, you might need to locate licenses or lack thereof for software, client connections, and hardware. For example, the client access license, CAL, being used to access a Windows Server licensing compliance violation can have legal ramifications, not to mention availability and integrity repercussions. Track man hours and expenses. Every action that is taken by the investigators of an incident response team should be logged and documented so as to act as a proper audit trail. Investigators normally need to sign in before being allowed to access an affected area or a computer. The total man hours, sign in and sign out times, as well as any expenses incurred, should be thoroughly documented. Man hours might be tracked through a computer system. When an examiner collects digital evidence, he or she should abide by best practices. One best practice is to document everything, a fairly simple concept that we have mentioned so many times that you should now have documentation on the brain. But best practices can be more encompassing. For example, the following example procedure defines a best practice for preserving evidence, including live volatile data in memory. Photograph the computer and scene. If the computer is off, do not turn it on. If the computer is on, photograph the screen. collect live data from the RAM image, collect other live data such as logged in users, the network connection state, and so on. Only if the drive is encrypted. Collect a logical image of the drive. Special software will be required. Unplug the power cord from the computer if the computer is a laptop or mobile device and it does not shut down properly. Then remove the battery, diagram and label all cords. Document all device model numbers and serial numbers that are available. Disconnect all cords and devices. 11. Collect an image of the hard drive using a hardware imager, or if the hardware imager is not available, use one of the software tools mentioned previously in this section. However, if that is the case, this step should be moved to earlier in the sequence before all cables were disconnected. Next, hash the image. Package all components using anti-static evidence bags. Collect additional storage media and store it using anti-static evidence bags. Keep all media away from magnets, radio transmitters, and so on. Collect instruction manuals, documentation, and notes. Document all steps performed during the seizure. This is a general procedure, but it will vary depending on the scene, the tools you have at your disposal, and whether or not the computer was on or sleeping when you arrived. Now, in general, I know what you were thinking. With all these policies and procedures in place, how does anything ever get done, and how do the incidents get analyzed quickly enough so as not to become a disaster? Well, training is important. Personnel need to be trained quickly and efficiently without getting too much into the minutiae of things. They also need to be trained to take action quickly by narrowing down an organization's policies to just what an employee needs to know. You can create a short but sweet list of key points for the employee to remember. Need to know is in itself an important security concept in companies. It is designed as much to hide information from people as it is to prevent information overload. For example, if a person were choking, the information you want to know is how to perform the Heimlich maneuver. You don't care why a person chokes, what the person ate for breakfast, or how specifically the maneuver works. This concept helps when there is an event or incident. The employees don't need to sift through waves of policies to find the right action to take because they are on a need-to-know basis and will quickly execute what they have been trained to do. Need to know also comes into play when confidential or top secret information is involved. In classified environments, top secret information is divided into pieces, only some of which particular people have access to. The compartmentalization of information not only helps to secure data, it also increases productivity and efficiency in the workforce. IT security frameworks. We have discussed a lot in this book so far. It can leave some people's heads spinning. One way to reduce the chaos is to implement an IT security framework. This could be something that your organization devises, or it could be a widely accepted set of standards. The goal of any IT security framework is to provide an implementable set of security controls for the IT environment and document the processes, procedures, and policies used to perform the implementation. While an organization might opt to create its own framework, it makes sense for organizations, especially larger ones, to use standards that have already been thoroughly planned out, or at least base their framework on those standards. For example, ISO IEC 2000 family of information security standards. We mentioned ISO IEC 27002:2013 already, but you will find that there are several others. You could find more information from at this link, https://www.iso.org ISO IEC 27001 information security.html. Then there is the NIST, which defines all kinds of guidelines and recommendations within the SP 800 and the SP 1800 publication groups. See the link for more information, http://csrc.nist.gov/pubs/sp.html. Next, there is ISACA's control objectives for information and related technologies SOBIT framework, which divides IT into 4 sections: plan and organize, acquire and implement, deliver and support, monitor and evaluate. That pretty much sums up everything we've talked about in this book. Also, you might be interested in the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, ITIL, Business Information Services Library, BISL, and Project Management Body of Knowledge, PMBOK, a good NIST document that combines the usage of several of these can be found at the link https://www.nist.gov/sites/ Default Files Documents Framework Cybersecurity Framework 021214.pdf. You will also find that the US government and military have their own resources on the subject, or depending on the scenario, will use one of the aforementioned standards. So some of these are regulatory, and you as an employee must abide by any of them that are applicable to your organization or profession. Some are non-regulatory, but usually the organization strongly urges its employees to accept them. Most of what I detailed so far are used in the United States, but there are other specific standards and guidelines used by other countries. In some cases, for example, in the European Union, guidelines or international reference frameworks can also be industry specific or could define how precise tasks and problems within an organization are to be approached. For example, the company you work for might repair mobile devices for corporations. This company would require a specific secure configuration guide detailing how the mobile devices are repaired, stored, handled, and so on. Or you might be interested in benchmarking your servers. A detailed list of procedures is vital so that you can obtain reliable results in a controlled environment. Then there is software development. When building software, you might embrace the concept of use case analysis, which is a requirement analysis technique practice in software engineering. The use case analysis can benefit from well-written procedures within an IT security framework. Let's not forget about software-defined networking, SDN, which is an approach to computer networking that allows admins to programmatically control and manage network behavior via interfaces such as OpenFlow and Cisco's Open Network Environment. SDN can benefit greatly from a well thought out framework. Your IT security framework might include risk analysis and vulnerability assessment tools and how to use them. For example, using the Security Content Automation Protocol, SCAP, SCAP, to automate vulnerability management. The framework might also incorporate how to properly Utilize enterprise resource planning (ERP) software, which is used to manage and automate many back office functions of technology in a larger organization. These examples are endless, really. Just about anything we talked about in this book can be incorporated into your IT security framework. So you see the IT security framework could be large or small. It might deal with a specific task or many tasks within an organization, but often the content is the framework can be applied to many different solutions and implementations. The goal is to organize a group of processes and procedures and policies of your organization into a single cohesive agenda that all employees can easily understand and work within. From a security perspective, what this means is that the IT security framework, if designed properly, can help an organization to provide for defense in depth of systems and networks and increase the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data. Chapter summary. For an organization to realize a high level of security, the implementation of policies and procedures is highly recommended, and in some cases may be mandatory. Data sensitivity can be classified to better define which users are allowed to access specific data. Personnel policies such as privacy policies, acceptable use, change management, separation of duties, job rotation, succession planning, and onboarding are all very useful to an organization in that they help to identify exactly what a user is supposed to be doing and not doing, and how the user will be trained and brought into the mold, so to speak. Policies are also used to describe what happens to data when it is no longer needed and what should be done with the media that holds the data, whether it is the clearing of data, the purging of data, or other methods of sanitizing data, or even the destruction of media. This might be necessary at the end of a particular device's lifespan. The terms policy and procedure are sometimes used interchangeably. It will depend on the organization. However, for many companies, the policy is often a broader concept, whereas the procedure is a very specific step-by-step instruction. Perhaps the most important procedure is the one that defines what an organization will do during an incident. One thing that we can easily forget to do is to try and learn from incidents, because they will happen at some point. Proper documentation can really drive home the idea of the lesson learned. It can also help us to recall what the specific problem was and why it occurred, ultimately allowing us to define ways to prevent it from happening again. It's all of these policies and procedures and the people who implement them that contribute to the overall security plan of an organization. All of the technical know-how and the assessments and analysis that we discussed throughout the book can be leveraged by the power of well-defined organization policies and procedures, and those can collectively be planned and organized through the use of an IT security framework. So this concludes my training on the Comptia Security Plus course. Hope you enjoyed listening, and so please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next set of videos. Thank you again.